What's up, you guys? Eco the Living Planet here, bringing you my draft analysis for the International Battle League Season 8 drafts. IBL, this is my very first time in an upload required draft league, hence why this YouTube channel is so young and starting out so fresh. But after a lot of convincing, my good friend Howler finally talked me into getting into the upload scene and trying out for the IBL. So there's a lot of really strong players here. It's a good chance to sort of make a splash within the Pokemon uploading community. So my goal in this league is to try to just kind of let loose and have fun. I'm sort of known, for those of you who know me firsthand, I maybe take leagues a little too seriously sometimes. So I'm just trying to kind of play a little bit outside my comfort zone here. And so I've drafted a team that I think is a lot of fun. Intentionally maybe pick some stuff that will be a little bit challenging for myself to use because I want to grow a bit as a player. Very much outside of my typical wheelhouse, what we're going to be talking about here. So without further ado, let's talk a little bit about my draft, starting with the very first pick and the pinnacle Pokemon of it, Dracovish, aka Mr. Fish. Dracovish is admittedly probably the ugliest Pokemon I've ever seen. It just has a really terrible design on its face, although the mythology behind it, the fact that it's based on a real-life fossil that was sort of messed up by a wannabe paleontologist is kind of cool. So conceptually, it's got some interesting stuff behind it. Dracovish does one thing, and it does that one thing really well. It clicks Vicious Rend and stuff gets KO'd, unless it has water absorb, pretty much. So Dracovish is just the absolute centerpiece of this team. Everything is built around making sure that Dracovish can fulfill its function, which is to click Vicious Rend and net KOs. And that's pretty much it. Dracovish has a really good offensive and defensive typing in Dragon and Water. The secondary Dragon typing gives it a strong secondary stab move in Outrage, which is nice because it only has base 90 attack, which really isn't that great. It really relies on the Vicious Rend power and Strong Jaw to net those KOs. So again, everything around this team is built around supporting the Dracovish. So with that comes the second pick, which is also very important and supports Dracovish very much, and that's the Gigantamax Venusaur. So unfortunately, Chlorophyll is banned in this league. Not something that I personally voted for. I voted to allow it even before I knew that I would be getting Venusaur, but regardless, it was deemed unhealthy for the metagame, so that is not permitted. So Gigantamax Venusaur's job when paired with Dracovish is fairly straightforward. Its job is to break down the bulky water absorbers that Dracovish cannot KO on its own. So things like Seismitoad, Gastrodon, Vaporeon, Mantine. Well, I guess not really so much Mantine. Mantine can probably take a few hits from Venusaur. But the rest of those are going to be handled very well by Venusaur's powerful attacks. I mean, it has a great base 100 special attack, which is not nearly as great as Mega Venusaur last generation, but it has a pretty healthy HP stat to go along with that. Decent typing in Grass and Poison, and so I'm sure that this season the Venusaur is going to be able to get a lot of different KOs. Its signature move, forget what it's called honestly at this moment, don't shoot me, Brendan, for that. The signature move is really cool because it demands a grass type switch in, and so it'll take away 1/6 of the opponent's HP every turn for a little while. And obviously grass types do not want to switch into a Gigantamax Venusaur because I can just max ooze on them and boost special attack, and this thing can grow out of control very quickly. Haha, grow. So my third pick in the draft was Alakazam. This thing at tier 2 is just insane in my view. I think that this generation Alakazam is absolutely worthy of being a tier 1 Pokemon, and I saw this and I was like, okay, I definitely need to get the value pick in tier 2. Alakazam patches a few issues that Dracovish and Venusaur have, but not necessarily very many. so it sort of fits a little bit better with the team overall and will probably make more sense as I go through my other picks. Alakazam, doesn't need a whole lot said for it. It's a very fast glass cannon that hits hard, especially base 135 special attack, backed up by base 120 speed. And so this thing can come in, it can get revenge kills, it can clean up at the end of a game. Focus Sash plus Magic Guard means that it's going to be immune to hazards, and it can use that free turn to fire off a hit or to even set up with Nasty Plot. Alakazam, of course, has lots of useful utility as well, like Encore, Disable, Thunder Wave. Typically you run Alakazam obviously as an attacker, and so I doubt that I'm gonna make a ton of good use of that utility, but it's sort of nice to know that it's available to me. So the next Pokemon definitely makes some more sense and starts to put the team together a bit. Politoed provides the rain. Politoed makes it rain. Politoed is a fairly defensive Pokemon with decent special defense, not completely crippling physical defense. It has good HP. So Politoed predominantly here does a couple of things. First of all, it takes a water absorber off of the board and means that people cannot use it as a Dracovish check, which is nice. But the main thing that it does is it actually provides rain support for the Dracovish, and to a lesser extent for the Venusaur as well. So Venusaur being able to not take fire hits super effectively in the rain is definitely appreciated. Dracovish's ability to hit even harder with Fisher's Rend in the rain is just absolutely devastating. Politoed has plenty of nice utility all around, from Toxic to Haze to Perish Song. Unfortunately, Politoed did not get Flip Turn this generation, which is really sad. I was really hoping that Game Freak would do it right and make Politoed finally somewhat equal with Pelipper. Unfortunately, that is not the case. Politoed did recently get access to Earth Power, though, which is a somewhat interesting coverage move, I guess. So Politoed, just generally speaking, probably not going to come to a lot of matches, but when it does, it will provide a lot of great offensive support for the Dracovish. Silvally is an interesting B tier. So the purpose of Silvally is basically that it is a catch-all Pokemon. Silvally is very well-rounded with base 95 stats all around, which gives it a pretty useful speed tier, good bulk, and good offenses. It has a wide move pool, everything from Flamethrower to Thunderbolt to Explosion, utilities such as Defog and Parting Shot, and then of course Multi-Attack, which was buffed this generation to base 120 power. Silvally also has the ability to hold its special drives and change type. So that's very useful because, spoiler alert, as we go through this, I did not draft a fire type for the team, and so Silvally is sort of the de facto fire type. I also, at the end, you'll see that I didn't get the best steel type, and so having all of those options being able to be covered by Silvally is really beneficial for the team overall. So another tier 3 Pokemon that I really wanted to use was Galvantula. Unfortunately, Howler took Galvantula from me during the draft, and so I had to settle for my second pick, which honestly, now that I'm kind of actually in the swing of things, might have been better. So we got Vikavolt, the Stag Beetle. Massive base 145 special attack stat. Very useful ability in Levitate because I do not have a whole lot of great ground resists or immunities on this team. It's obviously a fighting resist too with its bug typing. Vikavolt has great bulk. It's not particularly fast, and it did get access to Sticky Web this generation. So the fact that it has access to Sticky Web now is very helpful because overall my team is kind of slow, but the Sticky Web will help Dracovish net KOs and outspeed more Pokemon than it ordinarily would, which means that Fishious Rend will hit really freaking hard most of the time. Vikavolt is also obviously not an offensive slouch. It can pivot around with Volt Switch. Vikavolt is just an all-around great addition to the team that I'm excited to try out. For my other Tier 1 Pokemon as my free pick, I decided to get Tyranitar. So a secondary weather center in addition to Politoed, and maybe a little bit of an unconventional pick with Dracovish in Tier 1 simply because it makes the team kind of slow. I joked when I drafted this team that it's my dinosaur team because it has Venusaur, Tyranitar, and Dracovish all at the top. So Tyranitar's job here is to provide sand. Dracovish does have access to Sand Rush in this league, and although Vicious Rend is superior 95% of the time, I do love the option of being able to pick between Rain and Sand. I think that makes this team a lot more difficult to prep for and a lot more threatening on paper. Tyranitar is a very reliable Stealth Rock setter. It has a great wide move pool, excellent bulk. Obviously a lot of weaknesses, especially the 4-time weakness to fighting. Not something that is super thrilling, admittedly, but overall I think that Tyranitar's utility and bulk and sheer offensive power make it a really good pick for the team. Although, again, it does kind of slow things down, but between the sticky webs that Vikavolt is setting and the fact that Dracovish can run Sand Rush, I think that things will turn out okay in the end. So for Tier 5, we got Wigglytuff on the Molalla Morelulls roster. That is kind of a tough team name to say, Molalla Morelulls. So Wigglytuff is a Pokemon that I've wanted to try for a long time. Admittedly, since I've seen Howler use it in this league and in one other. Wigglytuff has a massive base 140 HP stat, really poor base 50 and below defenses, however. Its special attack stat is an okay base 85. It's not particularly fast, but it does have a really gigantic move pool. Wigglytuff has just about every coverage move under the sun that you can imagine on the special side. It has good utility moves like Knock Off and Wish and Teleport and Stealth Rock. This thing can just do just about everything. It doesn't do it particularly well, but it can do just about everything. And so I think that Wigglytuff will make a really fun addition to the team because it can fill a lot of niches. I feel like Wigglytuff will be sort of a good go-to Pokemon for, hey, I'm missing that this week, well, I'll just run it on Wigglytuff. For the Tier 4 Pokemon, the first one that I picked, we have Drifblim. This one was sort of a deliberate counter pick to a lot of the drafts. We see that a lot of the different drafts picked some variation of terrain, with Rillaboom's grassy terrain being one of the first things picked. We have a Gigantamax version of that as well as a non-Gigantamax version. Galarian Weezing, which I think did just get dropped. Lots of different terrain options running around out there, and Drifblim makes a good sort of counterpick to all of those. Drifblim, sort of similar to Wigglytuff, outstandingly massive HP stat, very frail defenses, okay offenses, so you can make use of it. It has a really bad offensive move pool, frankly. I was really sad that they didn't finally give it Hurricane this generation. Just Game Freak absolutely robbed it by keeping Air Cutter its best freaking special flying move. Sorry, that's my Drifblim rant. So anyway, I guess Drifblim will be fun. I did have it once in the league before, and I didn't get to use it much. And it does provide another hazard removal option, I guess, but I can't imagine I'm going to run a lot of Defog Drifblim. Hitmontop, on the other hand, is probably a bit more of a reliable hazard remover. So Hitmontop is a very fun fighting type. I always enjoy when I get a chance to draft any of the Hitmon Pokemon. Hitmontop is very well balanced, not particularly fast, but it can patch that up with Rapid Spin. It has access to Close Combat, Mach Punch, Fake Out, Bullet Punch, basically every type of priority under the sun. It has two very good abilities in Technician and Intimidate. It also got access to Triple Axle this with the Isle of Armor DLC, which is a really fun ice-type coverage move, very similar to Triple Kick, but obviously, ice-type. So I think that Hitmontop fills a lot of holes in this team nicely, being able to rapid spin away hazards, being a fighting type that's very strong and well balanced. Whereas a lot of the other Pokemon in this team sort of have, maybe one thing that they're very strong at, but then a couple of other large weaknesses. So I think that Hitmontop will patch things really nicely, as the Hitmon family tends to do. And then finally, the most exciting pick of the draft, in my opinion, Galarian Stunfisk. Just an all-around, very not good Pokemon, I'm gonna admit. But it has ground typing, it has steel typing, it has a cool ability in mimicry, it has a large HP stat, good defense, not absolutely terrible offenses, although it is pretty slow. It can set Stealth Rock, and I feel like that's about it. Galarian Stunfisk, as I said, is not a particularly good Pokemon, but it has a few memey little niches that are going to be kind of fun to use in this league. So, that is the full IBL draft analysis, and a rundown of everything that we picked. Some of the biggest things that are going to give my team trouble are obviously things that have fast Pokemon. So fast, speedy Pokemon like Zeraora, Dragapult, basically anything that can slap on a Scarf and be guaranteed to be outsped by Dracovish is going to give this team trouble. Dragapult in particular deserves a little bit of a notable mention because it has Clear Body, so it is going to be immune to the sticky webs. So things like Dragapult are really going to rely on strong defensive game combined with using other Pokemon that can offensively pressure it very well. Aside from those fast Pokemon, obviously we've got to watch out for our water absorbers, but that's sort of what Venusaur and Vikavolt are there for. I think that this team has a lot of potential to do very well. I think that it has a lot of holes, admittedly, and like I said earlier, this is not a team that I would typically go for. This is very hyper-offensive. I don't think I have a single Pokemon with a defense or a special defense stat above 110, which is not particularly high, although I do have several Pokemon with very large HP stats. So in some ways it kind of balances out, but I don't exactly have walls that are going to be switching into moves all the time. So I'm going to have to play a very strong offensive game here, relying a lot on things to break down Dracovish checks and then eventually clean up with that. Alakazam obviously does a very good job as a cleaner too. I have several very strong wall breakers and some good utility Pokemon that can kind of fill multiple roles, such as Hitmontop, Silvally, Wigglytuff, Drifblim, Vikavolt. So we're going to see how things go. My goal this season is to have fun and not try to put too much emphasis on my performance. And hopefully, we can accomplish those tasks. So I really appreciate Brendan and the other IBL moderators for inviting me to play this season. I know that, in the past season, I was able to help all of the people in this league out by helping provide a LAN play server that we're able to do matches on, which anyone who has a Wi-Fi league, obviously that having your own LAN play server is a big help. So being able to kind of weasel my way in and make good with the mods for that, really looking forward to this opportunity to grow from this community and have some fun battles. So the Molalla Morelulls are coming for you this season. IBL, are you ready?